All right, so first let me start off by saying the strategy we're going to go over tonight is the scalping strategy. It is called the sheriff strategy. It is a very, very simple strategy, and it is a very profitable strategy. The things you need to know about this strategy are that it runs off of RSI. And the indicator that we use to get our signals, the application that we use to get our signals is Easy RSI, which you can download. I use Easy RSI 7 because we trade on small time frames, 15-minute and 5-minute. On the 15-minute and the 5-minute on the small time frames, the period of 7 works more effectively because the time period is so small that you don't need all the data that is involved with the 14. So that's why I use RSI 7, and that's where I keep my settings on my charts. So you can download Easy RSI 7. Hopefully most of you have that. I know we've discussed that before, having that. And then when you download that, if you'll look at my screen right now, I have the settings up on the screen. These are where I put my settings. I put my overbought at 25 or oversold at 25, my overbought at 75. Your general rule on RSI is that overbought is 70 and oversold is 30. The reason why I set mine at 25 and 75 is because the further you get into that, the more effective it is for this strategy. Everybody good on the settings?
Anybody have any questions before we proceed? If you do, just please chat them. If not, you guys know. Oh, you're so grand. Sir, it looks like we can proceed. You can go ahead.
Okay. Let me.
While Chris is doing that, you guys, it's raining terribly here. Can you guys hear the rain in my background? If you can hear the rain, just tap 1. If you cannot hear the rain, give me a 5 if you don't mind. Great, great. If you guys can hear the weather here, please let me know, and I'll just go in and out of muting my background. Thank you so much.
That's what I wanted the whole time. Okay.
Are you guys excited to know this scalping strategy? Some people stray away from scalping techniques. If you're excited, give me a 5, let me know. Cool. Chris, you have a lot of people excited. Oh, Shelly put $5. Well, she likes scalping anyway, so that's not fair.
Yeah, Shelly is a scalper, much like myself. So the basic thing that we're looking for when we get our signal is that, well, another thing that I want to discuss real quick with you guys is that one of the main components of this strategy to be successful at this strategy is that you want to make sure that you are only trading pairs that have a very small spread. Your basics of this strategy is that you're just trying to get 2 to 5 pips. And so if you are trading a pair that has a really large spread, i.e. Bitcoin, for example, Shelly knows Bitcoin well. It has a spread that's typically between 16 and 25. you're not going to make a lot of profit off of 5 pips on that. It's just not worth the risk. So what you want to look for is you want to look for a spread that's under 1 or slightly over 1. Good place to start looking for that is Euro USD, GBP USD, GBP JPY. Those are the type of pairs that the guy that invented this strategy, those are the ones he trades. And it's because the spreads are small and he doesn't have to make up a lot of ground by doing that. As you'll see, going through on this slideshow right now, there are I've actually just put up the ones that are on my actual settings on my RS7. These are the ones I get a signal when they're overbought or they're oversold. So you can write those down, and I'll stop for a minute and let you guys ask any questions, give you guys a chance to write those down. I will warn you that I personally have checked this out, and I do not trade this strategy on the Australian session. The reason behind that is at 4 o'clock Central Standard Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, when the Australian session starts, the spreads go through the roof. The other day, I caught Euro USD on there. It had a spread of 3, which is ridiculous for Euro USD. So be careful. Certain times a day, when certain sessions are ending and certain sessions are beginning, the brokers get kind of crazy and start jacking up the prices that they're charging you on the spread. And you just got to be careful. That's not the time you want to be scalping.
Chris, if you don't mind, can you repeat that again? Because we have a few new people on, and I just want to make sure they really understand what you were saying.
Yeah. So what I'm talking about is, and there's the other screen of the ones that I'm in. Basically what I'm referring to here is, okay, so when you go and you get into a trade, off the top, the broker is getting their money. And the way they get their money off you is 2 ways. One, they charge you a commission, which comes out based on the size of lot that you're putting in. The other way is what you call the spread. And that's the difference between the bid and the ask. If you want to look at your main screen when you put in a trade, the difference between those two is what the spread is. That spread, on some pairs, that spread's usually pretty high. If you're trading exotics, for instance, your spread's going to be pretty high. If you're one of these people that likes to trade, rubles, like the Russian currency, you're going to pay a very, very high spread. But on currencies that are more typical, like GBP, JPY, almost all the USD currencies, USD CAD, USD CHF, USD JPY, your spread is pretty low. It's usually between 1 and 2 pips. Most of them you can get into like Euro USD for 0.8, which is 8 pips, which is almost a pip. And that's what you want to look for. You want to look for something that you're when you get in the trade, you're not that far behind. Like Euro NZD, for instance, typical spread on that is anywhere between 3 and 5. That's a lot of pips to make up. Does that better explain it?
Oh, that was great, sir. Thank you kindly.
Okay, is everybody okay on the pairs that I keep in my settings for alerts?
If you have any questions, please put a 5. If you're good, you can put a 1.
And the way you set this up is, if you look at my screen right now, if you go to this plus symbol, and you hit this plus symbol, it will allow you to make your own watch list. So you hit this, and then you just scroll through and you find the pairs that you want to add in there. And then you can set the alerts to what you want. Now, you have to be premium. You have to pay to be able to set up alerts on 5 minute, but that doesn't matter. We're not using alerts on 5 minute. We're only looking for alerts on 15 minute on this strategy. So that covers what you need.
Okay, sir, it doesn't look like we have any questions at this moment. You can go ahead and proceed.
All right. So what I just talked about, just to illustrate this to you guys a little bit more, if you see right there, it says spread. And where I'm circling is GBP, JPY. It says spread 15. What that means is when I get into this trade, it's gonna cost me 1 pip, 1.5 pips. Okay. It's gonna cost me 1 full pip and 5 pipettes. And if you're wondering what the pipette is, that's the pipette right there that I'm circling. So just to further help you guys get that.
Any questions, you guys? No, it looks like we're good to go, sir. 1 second. Bernita would like to know, sir, can you tell us what broker you are using?
Yes, I'm using JFAX. And the main reason why I have JFAX is because JFAX will let you trade crypto and indices. And so that's why I use JFAX. I've never had any problems with them, other than when we couldn't put money in them for a while, and that was frustrating. But that's who I currently use is JFAX.
Okay, thank you so much, she said.
All right, so what you want to start with when you get this alert is you want to go to your 15 minute, and you want to verify that your RSI is overbought or oversold. In this case, on the one that is currently on my screen, we were overbought. Okay. So once I go to the 15 minute, I go to the 15 minute for just a brief second to confirm. Okay. And that's all I do with that. And then I go to the 5 minute. The important part of this strategy is entry and exit. Okay. Entry is going to be crucial. What we're doing here is, if you see on my screen, you see that we're clearly in an uptrend. Okay. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to catch that little bit of pullback that happens real quick, and we're trying to make money on that. As you'll see right here, we had it. We have 2 bearish candles, and this is the 5 minute. I've already gone to the 5 minute. I already checked my 15. I confirmed what I need. So I got a nice little confirmation that we're on a pullback. All right. So I look for entry at that point. And if you'll see the difference between the one I shot, the screenshot before, and this one, I'll go back. So we enter here. Okay. Now this happens very, very quickly. At this point, that's about 3 pips that it just moved. Okay. And that's how quick it happens. You know, the perfect entry on this, when you enter it, it will go almost immediately into the blue. But it doesn't always happen that way. But it does from time to time. This is just one of those when I did this that it went straight into profit. Typically when I do this, I'm running 2 to 3 positions. And the number one thing about this strategy is don't get greedy. When you get two pips profit, 2 to 3 pips profit, take your profit. Start executing out of your positions. Because like I said, this is just temporary. It's not, you're going against the trend here. It's really risky. So when you get your profit, get out. And that's pretty much all I got on that. I mean, it's real simple. You go to your 15-minute for your confirmation on your RSI. I will say this on the RSI, as far as overbought, the higher you can get with that, the better. The closer to 80 you get, the better chance of success you're going to have. Sometimes on the London session, you'll get ones with news coming out. You'll get some GBP pairs that they'll go into the 80s, 85. I've even seen a couple in the 90s. Hey, when they get that high on the RSI, it's money time. Eventually, that thing's coming back. It's going to sell. And when it does, that's my opportunity.
Any questions, you guys? If you do, just chat at us, please. Okay, you're getting ones. Okay, we have a question. Chris, this is coming from Jackie. He said, could you please discuss entry again?
Sure. Okay, so once we go to the 15-minute, I always go to the 5-minute. And the reason why I go to the 5-minute is because that's where I find my entry, my most success at finding entry. A lot of things that happen, are going to happen really, really quick. And so I'll go to my 5-minute, and once I get there, I look for that bearish trend. If it's been in a bullish trend, I start to look for that pullback to come. And I generally wait for one bearish candle, and then when the second one starts, I try to get in.
Jackie, did that help you? If so, chat me once, please. He said yes, thanks. We have a question from Jason. Jason would like to know, what pair have you had the most success with trading?
So there's 2 of them on this one. One, I've had a whole bunch of success with GBP JPY on this strategy. The other is USD JPY. I will say that this is going to sound strange, but on USD JPY, I typically always look for overbought so I can sell, just because I've had a whole bunch of success selling USD JPY with this strategy. GBP JPY, I've had both, buying and selling, but USD JPY, there have been times I've just absolutely murdered it selling it. And so what I typically look for with that pair is to sell it.
Jason, did that answer your question? Chat me once if so. Okay, great, great. Anybody else have any more questions? This is your time to ask these scalping questions. I know a lot of people have been looking to scalp. So I have a question in the meantime, Chris.
Sure.
So I understand that I see how you're, using this strategy on these different pairs. And from the last time you and I went over this, I believe you've actually added a couple of pairs. Is that correct?
No, those are the same pairs I had last time.
I didn't think you had this many before. I mean, I'm not sure, but I thought it didn't seem like this many.
I've added some since you and I talked, the time you and I personally went over it, but not since the last, since you and I did the Zoom, I have added some, but since I was on last time, I have not.
So let me ask you a question. The pairs that, when you and I last talked, the pairs that you have added, what was it that made you know to add those pairs to this strategy?
Yeah, so that's all off a spread. And what you're asking there, is a good point. I do maintenance on this strategy all the time. I go through and I typically check what my spreads are pretty regularly. And if something, for instance, there was, and I forget which pair it was, but there was a CHF pair that I took off because I noticed the spread was higher than I wanted. So what I do is I just typically go through and look at the spreads. And if the spread is above that range that I believe I can make money, I'm not going to lie to you. Like if I see a spread that's over 2, it doesn't fit this strategy. It just doesn't, because that's 2 pips I start in the hole. It's 2 pips I start down. And I'm only looking for 2 pips. So, 2 to 5 pips. So if I'm looking for 5 pips, now I have to make 7 pips. And that's a lot. And that's pushing it. I know that, this strategy doesn't, typically put out that many pips. So I want to keep that spread as low as possible.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. Any questions, you guys? Well, great. I'm going to take this time to ask a couple of questions then, so I can pick your brain. So I know you're a person that does a lot of back testing, and I know you're pretty big on that. Hold one second. I'm going to bring my question back. We have a question from Terry. Terry would like to know, she just said, you explain things very well.
Thank you.
So any other questions or statements, you guys? So since we have this opportunity, and I know this is off the cuff, could you tell us a little bit about how you're going about doing your back testing for your pairs, and where you are with this? I know this is something that is very near and dear to you, and I like to do it as well. So I would like to see, if you don't mind, what you could tell us in reference to that.
All right. So I read this book recently, and the guy was talking about the importance of back testing, and so what I realized through reading this book was that this guy took back testing to a whole new level, and I've actually began to start this type of back testing, and it has elevated my trading. One of the things that he talked about in this book was that if you want to become a master trader, you need to have 10,000 trades under your belt. And he talked about the only way you're going to get 10,000 trades under your belt is there's 2 ways. One is you're just going to make that many live trades, which is going to take a really, really long time. The other way is that in combination with making your live trades, you need to go back and test your strategies. So what he talks about is, and the way that I've been practicing back testing is, whatever your strategy is, if your strategy, for instance, if the sheriff strategy is something that you really want to check out, what he does is, and I don't know what everybody trades on, but on my laptop, I typically trade off of my MetaTrader 4 app. Now, what I do is I put it on airplane mode, which don't do this now because it'll kick you off the Zoom, but I hit F12, which puts it on airplane mode, and it allows me to scroll back as far back as I want. Now, if I'm in a 5-minute chart, it won't let me go back that far because there's so many candles. But if I'm in, let's say I'm in a 4-hour chart or an hour chart, I can go back literally years. In a day chart, I can go back 20 years and test whatever strategy I want. And what I do is I just go back all this amount of time, and I find a starting point with whatever I'm using, where I find using the indicators I'm using or no indicators, and I find where my entry point would be. And from that point on, I pull out a piece of paper and I write it down just like I'm entering the trade. Okay, and then I scroll forward one candle at a time using the arrows, and go through it just like it would if it was live. And it's time consuming to do that. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you got a strategy you want to test out, and you want to get some experience at seeing how it plays out, that's how to do it. A lot of people, if you're struggling on practicing your zones and stuff like that, go back in time and mark your zones that way and look at them today. A lot of these zones that are playing in today's market, played in the market 10 years ago. If you don't believe me, go back and check it. You'll be shocked to see this stuff. But that's how I typically back test. And I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, it's very time consuming to do it that way. When I write down, what I do is I write my entry point, I write my proposed take profit, my proposed stop loss, and then I just play the trade out and see how it happens. And then when I'm done with it, I write it in a column, win or loss. It's one or the other.
We have a couple of statements, and then I'll ask. Well, by the way, if there's any questions, you guys can go ahead and chat them, and then I'll start reading the statements, and then we'll move forward. So if you have any questions, go ahead and chat them. Meanwhile, I'll be on to the statements. Shelly said to you, "Oh, heck yeah, good info." Renita said, "Awesome info, Chris. Wow, put it on airplane mode." Yeah, I know, that really blew my mind too. So let me ask you this, Chris. What's the name of the author and the name of the book, if you don't mind sharing?
The name of the book is Naked Trading. I'm not sure the name of the authors. Jason, is Jason still on?
Yes, he is.
Jason,
would you like for him to speak?
Jason, do you have the author's name of that book?
He said he'll type it in, but he does have a question for you, sir.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Jason will know that. Jason's the one who actually hooked me up with that book. But it's a great read.
Chris, how big is the book? I wonder if it's the one by now Fuller.
It's a couple hundred pages.
Okay.
He covers in it, the main thing about him is that he's a naked trader. He doesn't believe in trading indicators. And if you don't believe in it, that's fine. But there's a lot of things in it from the psychology standpoint of trading and stuff like that you can learn. One of the things about the main author is that he's one of the founders of FX trading. So he's been a very successful trader himself, and now he owns a brokerage. So he knows what he's talking about. His results show that.
Jason wants to know, how many positions do you put in by scalping?
Okay, so on the sheriff strategy, I like to run three positions. The reason why I run three, the sheriff who came up with this, he usually runs 5. And this is a personal preference. For me, I can manage 3 more comfortably. And that's important because on this scalp anyway, there's no take profit, no stop loss. And so I got to manually close these positions out myself. And so 3 is where I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with being able to thumb through and close out 3 in a timely manner.
Okay, Jason typed it in. That's,
yep.
Let's see, Naked Forex by Alex. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So NEKRITIN, whatever that says. So I don't want to butcher it, but at any rate, there's the name of the author, you guys, and the title. So I would encourage you guys, if you're interested in anything that Chris is telling us tonight, to get this book. Jason, can you type in where you actually got the book from? Oh,
You can
great, great.
you can look it up on Amazon.
Okay, cool. He typed it in GroupMe, as you guys can see, and Amazon is always with everything. So, Chris, if you don't mind, because we have some new people, I've heard the story, and very few people probably have. Can you tell them how you actually got, hooked up on this strategy, and how you just took off from it, if you don't mind sharing this?
Okay, so thank you, Jason, by the way. Um, if you guys will look, I just posted a screenshot of a GBP JPY trade I did on this. And this one I actually did run 5 positions. Okay, so the way that this strategy came about was there was a Facebook page that was connected to the web analyzer. And this guy kept coming on every single day, and he was posting these 500 profit days. And he did this like every single day for 2 weeks. And this is when the web analyzer very first came out. And so everybody was like, what strategy are you using? And if you're familiar with the web analyzer, then you'll know that there's like 20 or 30 different strategies and to pick from. So everybody was asking him, which one he was using, and he said, none of them. He said, I've got my own strategy. And so everybody kept asking him, can we get that strategy? Can we get that strategy? Well, it turned out that Stephen Hooley, who is one of the creators of the web analyzer, was actually talking to him and actually had a copy of the strategy and was in the process of reviewing and testing it. So eventually they released this strategy, Stephen did, through a YouTube video that the sheriff made. The sheriff is a guy from Nigeria. A lot of people complained about the video and said they couldn't understand it because the internet connection wasn't good and he doesn't really speak all that good English. My thing is, though, like, if you really want to know how to make money the way he's making money, you'll focus your ears in and listen hard enough and you can figure it out. I didn't have any problem understanding him. To me, everybody understands the language of money. You know what I'm saying? And I understood him clear. Um, but it's a very, very simple strategy. It like I said before, it just runs off RSI. If you're familiar with the web analyzer, you know that most of their strategies involve 3 and 4 checks and a whole bunch of stuff. And that's why I struggled with the web analyzer. This strategy is simple. It's all RSI. That's all I'm looking at. RSI and price point. And between those two things, that's where, somebody asked about entry earlier. My entry is solely based off price point. Like, what's happening? Am I getting that pullback at this time? That's why I go the 5 minute.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Are you getting ready to show us something on this screen, sir?
No, I'm not. I'm just thumbing through.
Okay. So let me ask you this, if you don't mind. So
Sure.
how were you trading before you adopted this strategy?
I mean, so this strategy helped get me into scalping. Um, I've been around, I think I've been in IML, I think I've been around about 7, 8 months, 9 months maybe. And I would tell you guys to take the time to figure out what kind of trading fits you. I've tried all different kinds of trading. Originally, when I heard about scalping, I was reluctant and didn't think that it fit me. I've tried day trading. I got to tell you, I just don't have the patience for that. Scalping is, I'm just now starting to realize that, because I've turned around a couple times and seen scalping there, and scalping kind of fits me. It's the kind of trading that fits me. So it's just one of those things that kind of, you know, through me experimenting with different types of trading, I finally realized that that's my type of trading. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It goes back to what I always say, you know your personality. Find the thing that works for who you are. Don't try to be like nobody else. You know, some things may work for some people and some it may not. I'll give you a good example. Shelly knows her Bitcoin and she's a scalper, just like you. You scalp different, you know, because you go this route and she does Bitcoin, but you're still scalping. Well, when Shelly tried to get me to look at Bitcoin, I couldn't handle it. My heart was jumping and it was running all over the place. I was like, Shelly, this just isn't for me. This right here just puts me on too much edge. And so she was like, oh, Kimmy, you can do it. And I went back and I looked at it again. I was like, no, honey, you're going to have to do this. I'll listen to what you tell me to do. So it just goes back to the point of knowing who you are and your personality and understanding the different types of trading so that you can figure out your style and strategy. So thank you very much for that. We have a question, sir.
Sure.
Okay, it's from Angela. She said, I'm technically challenged sometimes. Can you please let me know when you set the alerts, what do you press next to make it start?
Okay, hold on. Let me go to that screen.
Thank you, sir. Kevin said, Scalpers Unite, sir, by the way. You're starting a club.
So it's real simple. Once I go to the settings screen, which I'm at right now, if you look at the screen, and so right here, if I tap, okay, so I'm going to use the 30-minute for an example, even though I don't use the 30-minute. But you see where the 30 minutes at right now? The 15-minute was there. So what I do to make that move is I press my finger right there and slide it over. Once it's in that position that the 15 minutes in right now, it's activated. And then I can back out of it.
Angela, did that answer your question?
And then from there on, you have to go and you have to set the pairs you want alerts on. And you do that through what I referenced earlier, but I'll go back to it.
Thank you, sir.
You do that through this. You hit the plus sign, which allows you to add to it. And you can add your pairs through that. It'll come up with a long list when you do that, and you'll just tap the one you want.
Okay, did everyone get that? Does anyone have any questions about where we are currently? If you have any questions, please chat them. If we're good to proceed, please type in once for me.
Yeah, and I'll just add something to what Kimmy just said. You know, I'm the type of person that likes instant gratification. You know, so scalping works for me. I like some excitement in my life, and that's scalping. Like you typically when I have a scalping session, like I get a rush from that, and it's because it happens real quick. You know, I would greatly encourage you guys that are new to take the time. It's okay to try all these different kinds of trading. You know, take the time to try out things until you find your fit. Because because so and so is having success with, you know, whether it's the day chart, the week chart, or the 4 hour or whatever, doesn't mean that you have to. That may not fit your style. You know, you may not be the type of person that can handle the rush and the stress of trading on the 5 and 15 minute, because it takes a special kind of person to do that. Look, 1 minute it may be going my way, and the next minute it may swing around and be the exact opposite. And that's the kind of way I am. I'm the kind of fly by the seat of your pants type person. You know what I mean? And that's why scalping fits me.
And you know what I'm learning, sir, from personal experience and one, talking and trying to see what Shelly was doing, and two, you know, I'm looking at copper. As a lot of people know, I'm flirting with copper, and now I'm actually courting it. And so for me, I saw where I was able to scalp copper, and I didn't feel that anxiety rush like I did with Bitcoin. Like what you do, it excites me, but what Shelly does, it makes me a nervous wreck. So from this training and what I've experienced, I realized that even though you still could be doing the same type of trading, the currencies could make a difference in how you're able to handle that execution of that style, which is
Yes,
huge.
the volatility of the currencies is what you're referring to. I personally, I love Bitcoin, but I do not trade Bitcoin right now, just because I have a saying about Bitcoin: Bitcoin giveth and Bitcoin taketh away. Um,
That's a
and,
good one.
and, and I love I love watching Shelly chart up Bitcoin, but um, Bitcoin and Ripple and Nas 100, um, man, like you got to have your heart medicine ready to go on those. They're very volatile. They're not for the new person to really mess with unless it's in a demo. You know, a lot of that, if you want to know, a key way to know if something is very volatile is look at the spread. Okay. If your spread is, 25 pips, or, like with Bitcoin, it's 2,500, which is like 25 pips. Okay. Sometimes right now it's been down lately, but your spreads are really big. And if your spreads are really big, that's a sign that it's a very volatile pair, because they're wanting to make sure that they get theirs. Also, another way to tell if something's very, very volatile, and you can only do this when you get into it, so you might want to check this out on your demo. But look at your margin, your required margin when you get into something. If it's very volatile, the margin level is going to be really high. Like, for instance, US 30. If you get into US 30 for a point one, it requires $1,000 of margin, right? That's really high, and that's with, that's with a really high leverage, 500 leverage. That's really, really high for that small of a lot size. That just tells you how volatile it is. They're wanting to make sure you have a certain amount of money in your account to be able to cover what's going to happen, because that thing may swing 200 or 300 pips in a matter of minutes.
That's some very good information. I would like to pause there for a second. Excuse me, you guys. If you have any questions in reference to what he said thus far before we proceed, please go ahead and chat that in the box. That was some very good information. If you don't have any questions, go ahead and give me some ones as always. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you guys. So, Chris, you bring me to an interesting point. Did you demo this before you actually went live with it?
Yes.
How long did you demo, if you don't mind?
Weeks.
3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks?
Yeah, I would say 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. And what did you use as your confirmation that you were ready to proceed to go live?
And my comfort level. So here's the thing about scalping. Scalping, generally, to make money scalping, you're using a larger lot size than you would on, say, a day trade, just because you're in it a short amount of time. So it's riskier from that standpoint. And the other thing is that, so when I'm putting in these trades, if I'm feeling uneasy because I feel like I've got a lot of money on the riding on this, I probably shouldn't be in it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I should feel at ease. Psychologically, I have to be comfortable with whatever I put in, giving it away, right? If I'm not, then that is going to make me make poor decisions.
Well, that goes back to when the experts always tell us, don't trade when you're emotional. Don't trade when you're angry. Don't trade when you're, distraught about something. If your mind is not clear, your gut is going to be a mess.
Yes.
So that's a very good point. Absolutely.
So
So
if you are getting in, and this goes for any kind of trading, if you are getting into trades and your stomach is in knots from doing it, stop. Okay, because that is going to affect your win probability. It's going to affect your mind, which is going to affect your how you win or lose.
absolutely.
The mental part of trading is the hardest part to get. And
So
some days, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, like sometimes I'm not there and I know that, and I don't open my laptop and trade.
that's discipline. That's straight discipline. And it tells us that you have spent a lot of time, at least it tells me, that you have spent a lot of time crafting what your discipline strategy is. For instance, you know that if you're feeling some of those uneasy feelings that warn us, it's just like being afraid of something. The reason we feel that flighty feeling is because it's a warning to us. And so you're saying when you get that warning signal from your gut, from your stomach, your discipline says you don't even open up the laptop. I think where a lot of times people fail with anything, when they're contradicting their discipline, they're going against the grain of what that discipline should be in place for, which is to warn them to go, to step back or maybe wait or to pause or hold off for a second. And because of that, when you have that lack and that gap, what happens is you move forward and you start doing stuff like, well, I'll just open up my laptop and look at it. Well, I won't get in it. I'll just see what it's doing. So then next thing you know, you find yourself doing something that you were all along in contradiction of, which
And your account's all in the red.
yeah. So when you go against your discipline, you're going to have problems the majority of the time. So that was a very good point. Thank you. Bernita says, that's great, Chris. It requires discipline to know when and when not to trade. Bernita, you're absolutely correct. Chris, would you like to speak to that?
Well, and the other thing about that is that, and I've learned this lesson, so I'll share it with you guys. Make sure you got the time to trade. And what I mean by that is that I'm typically at work at 2:00 in the morning, but I like the London breakout. So I've tried to jump on real quick and get into things, and I don't really have the time. Okay, and it always bites me in the ass. So, and I excuse my language there, but that's the only way I can think to say that. Okay, is that it always comes back and bites me, and so what I'm trying to say here is make sure that you have the time to sit down and actually look at the charts and do what you need to do, and find the time of day that works best for you to trade. And it's been a process of doing that. For me, typically, I come home at 7:00 in the morning and I trade between the hours of 7 and 10 in the morning. Now, what you need to do is once you find the time period that you have the time, then find the pairs that fit that time. There's certain pairs that trade that time of morning and are pretty active that time of morning. There's also pairs that aren't active that time of morning. I've had to go and look at the pairs that move that time of morning and see how I can, make those my pairs and see how I can make money off those pairs.
Very good point. Thank you, sir. Any questions off of that?
If you're like, for instance, if you like to trade the GBP pairs, if you're trying to trade those at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're fighting a losing battle. Those pairs trade early in the morning when the London session opens, and they also trade so-so during the overlap, which is between 6 a.m. Central Standard Time to about 10 a.m. Central Standard Time or 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. But they really break out at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, people, you have to study when you're new. You know, people who have been in for a while will know, but when you're new, at some point, you have to really understand when the session times and, you know, the session markets are in operation, the London, the New York, the Sydney, the Tokyo. As Jason always likes to point out, you know, when you're looking at the JPY pairs, one of the best things to do is to find the Japanese indicators. Well, the session goes along with that as well. So different sessions work different ways with different pairs. You just have to know which works better in what session. So great point. So let me ask you this, Chris. We only have a few minutes. And one of the things that I would like to know is, I hear how well you're doing. You can tell it. I mean, just from the first time I spoke to you to the first time you trade when we had the internet issues. And even to this point, you can hear the growth in you, which is phenomenal. Kudos to you. But my question to you is this: listening to you, where are you going to take this strategy next? Because it sounds like you're working on either fine tuning it, adding something to it. How are you going to sharpen this strategy?
I don't know. It's a good question, but I really don't know. I've been working with some other scalping strategies recently. You know, so I don't know. It's just something that with time, using it more, you know, it is something that I still trade. I haven't done it in a couple days because, like I said, I've been experimenting with some other things and looking at some other ways of trading. But the thing about this strategy is that it's really simple, and once you get to a point where you can master the entry and exit of it, I mean it's just pretty simple. It's a good. Other than the fact that it doesn't have a take profit and it doesn't have a stop loss, it's something that is really good for if you're new and you're interested in scalping, get on a demo and try this strategy because it's really simple. You know, you've only got one indicator to read and then price action. And that's really, really simple.
Sounds great. Yeah, Jason said, I'll teach you guys a good scalping strategy. I have several. It's always good to have a multitude of anything in your library or whatever it is that you're trying to do, want to do, or interested in doing.
Shout out to Jason, too. By the way, Jason, thank you. Had an exciting scalping strategy this morning. Thanks to your you passing that on.
So, Chris, I have one last question for you. You know, it's obvious you're doing amazing with this. We want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time out of your busy schedule, just teaching us and you know, just pouring into us. One of the questions I would like to ask you, and we'll close with this question, is how has this impacted your life, picking this strategy up and running with it like you have? What are the changes that you see in your life, your lifestyle, that this has done for you?
The one thing that this particular strategy has done for me, it's helped me realize what kind of trader I am. And that's big because now I have an identity as a trader, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I heard about scalping a long time ago and kind of shrugged it off and said it wasn't for me. And then, you know, Jason asked me to look into some things, and then I found this strategy and started, you know, testing it and started working on, you know, perfecting it and mastering it. And then then you asked me to do this. And, through that, scalping kept coming up to me. And, I'm a believer in like signs from above, you know what I'm saying? And so it was like, well, you know what? Maybe there's something with this. And so, this strategy opened my eyes to what kind of trader I am. And, through that self inventory that is really important in getting to know ourselves and see where we tick, because that's really, really important in trading, is knowing how you tick. I realized that this does fit me.
Really good stuff. Really good stuff. And I'll add to that by only saying that I encourage people, don't be afraid to be different. I know that's one of the things that I had to really wrap around my brain when I first got into IML is I was drawn to commodities and didn't even know it. And so I was like, oh man, nobody's doing this. But I had to learn not to be afraid to be different in this and do what I liked and the way I love looking at the fundamental analysis and everything. And so Jason was very instrumental in encouraging me to follow the passion that I had. And that was really eye-opening for me, which is part of the reasons why he's my trading mentor. And I'm just so thankful for that encouragement. One last question from the group, sir. And
Sure.
Vance would like to know, or was it Vance? I'm sorry, Chris Kirk would like to know, what was the name of the video on YouTube you referred to?
It is the sheriff strategy. I will see if I can pull it up and share it to group me. I know I've shared it with Kimmy. Kimmy, do you still have that video?
Possibly. You and I do a lot of chatting, so
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and try to look and see, sir. But I
I
will.
will. You guys give me a little bit, and I will try to post it and group me. Like I said though, because there's been a bunch of people to make their version of it. I want you guys to see the original. And just focus your ears and try to listen. It's not a great video, but what he says is straight power. You'll notice a couple things when you hear him talk. He only trades off the 15-minute. I did add the 5-minute to that. And the reason why is because of entry and exit. But if you look at his screen, when he's entering these trades, he's on the 5-minute. So just saying. But I will try to post that later.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So do you have anything else for us, sir, before I turn the floor over to Jason?
No, I'm grateful to get this opportunity, and like I said earlier, I hope that all you new guys take the time to sit down and figure out what fits you best. This is a lot of mental stuff, trading, and don't give up. But take the time to go through the different kinds of trading and see what fits you best. And if it's scalping, great. If it's day trading, great. Take that and run with it. And give it all you got. That's all I got.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate you. Thank you for giving us tips, wisdom, guidance, nuggets, and everything else that you have given us. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go, I'm going to ask you to do one thing, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to Jason. Please go into GroupMe and show Chris some love, some appreciation, some thanks. He really poured his heart out and opened up to us tonight, and that's what it's all about. That's the kind of group that we belong to, and that's why we're World Covenant inside of IML, and one of the best groups ever that will ever be seen in IML. Sir, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. Are you there, Jason?
I am here sometimes. How are y'all doing? Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear. Please proceed.
Okay. All right, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for participating. I saw I got almost up to 30 people on the call. That's what it takes, guys. It just takes repetition after repetition after repetition. What I do want to say, Chris has opened the doors for a lot of things. He did give me a real good aha moment to use with this, a couple of strategies that I have for scalping as well. So I'll perfect that strategy and bring it to you guys. Open the doors of Wakanda to you, T'Challa forever. And tomorrow, guys, don't forget we'll be doing our Zoom training by the request of Stacy and the others. That Zoom will be recorded. So if you need to show others the recording, I'm going to record it. I did switch it up a little bit, but y'all will enjoy it. I just put a little bit more cold hard facts in the presentation. So make sure you have your guest on that call. For those that are committed, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, we'll be looking forward to that. We'll be doing a dynamic job on that. And that is pretty much all I have. More announcements to come soon, guys. Stay tuned for the training on Thursday at 8 p.m. Central. I'm pretty sure I'll be teaching on something. Kimmy always writes out my schedule, but I look at it and then I forget because I have a million things going on. But guys, be great. Keep studying. Always remain a student. Always keep your teachability index on 0. And that's all I have, Miss Kimmy. It's over to you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your great words, sir. It's been a wonderful night, ladies and gentlemen, in this learning hub that we have. So all I'm going to say to you is take a look at the calendar. Realize that we are at the bottom of the second quarter of this year. July 1st will walk us into the March of the first of the third quarter. And so what I want you to do is take the information that you have learned all year and promise yourself that you're going to be greater at something. Pick 1, pick 2, pick 3 things that you're going to be greater at for learning and being on these trainings. Do not let this time be in vain. Enhance your training, enhance your learning, and I promise you, you'll see amazing results, just like Chris was able to present to us tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to wish you a good night, a great, fantastic tomorrow, and an outstanding week. May you impress yourself for the rest of this week. Good night. Take care. Love you. Bye-bye.